On December 3, 2024, a driver walked into my shop holding two oxygen sensors, one with a dealership logo and the other from a parts store shelf. The OEM sensor cost $285. The aftermarket version cost $42. He looked at me and asked the question I hear almost weekly, which one will last longer? I installed the cheaper one. 3 years later, it was still working perfectly. That moment is why this video exists, because the automotive parts industry has convinced millions of drivers that expensive always means better, and cheaper always means failure waiting to happen. Today, I am revealing which budget parts actually outlast premium brands, which expensive components are complete scams, and how to stop wasting thousands on markups that add zero value to your vehicle. The belief that price equals quality in automotive parts is one of the most profitable lies the industry ever told. Drivers hear dealer or OEM and immediately assume superiority. They see aftermarket or value brand and picture junkyard trash destined to fail within months. That conditioning runs deep, and it costs people real money every single day. I have been working on cars for over 2 decades, and I can tell you without hesitation that some of the most durable parts I have ever installed came from brands most drivers have never heard of. Meanwhile, some of the most expensive OEM components I have replaced failed embarrassingly early, sometimes before the cheaper alternatives ever would. Here is the uncomfortable truth the parts industry does not want you to know. OEM does not mean original quality anymore. It means original specification, and that specification was designed to meet cost targets, warranty periods, and profit margins, not maximum lifespan. When your car rolled off the assembly line, the manufacturer installed the cheapest part that would survive the warranty window without catastrophic failure. That is it. No over-engineering, no luxury materials, just good enough to avoid recalls and bad press. Once that warranty expires, you are told to replace failing parts with OEM components that cost 2, 3, sometimes 5 times more than functionally identical aftermarket alternatives. The price difference is not quality. It is branding, distribution markup, and the assumption that you will not question it. This is where most drivers go wrong. They assume the dealership part comes from some magical factory with superior materials and tighter tolerances. In reality, many OEM parts are manufactured by the exact same suppliers who make aftermarket versions. Denso, Bosch, Aisin, Continental, these companies supply original equipment to car manufacturers, then sell nearly identical parts under their own aftermarket brands for half the price. Same factory, same tolerances, different box. The only real difference is that one has a car logo stamped on it and the other does not. I have watched drivers pay $200 for a dealership alternator that failed in 18 months, then replace it with a $90 Denso unit that outlasted the car itself. I have seen $150 OEM oxygen sensors drift out of spec, while $50 NTK sensors kept running accurate for over 100,000 miles. I have installed $300 dealership brake rotors that warped within a year, then replaced them with $60 centric blanks that stayed smooth for the life of the vehicle. The pattern is undeniable once you stop assuming price determines performance. But here is where it gets tricky. Not all cheap parts are created equal. There is a massive difference between a quality aftermarket brand and bottom-tier garbage sold on marketplace platforms for suspiciously low prices. The industry counts on drivers not knowing that difference, so they lump everything non-OEM into one category and call it risky. That keeps people scared. That keeps them paying. In this video, I am going to show you exactly which budget parts consistently outlast expensive alternatives, which components you should never cheap out on, and how to recognize quality without paying for a logo. By the end, you will understand why the parts markup game exists, how to avoid it, and which brands deliver OEM performance at a fraction of the cost. Your wallet will thank you. Your car will run just as well. And you will never look at a dealership parts counter the same way again. Most drivers have no idea how the automotive parts supply chain actually works. They assume car manufacturers design and build every component in-house, maintaining strict quality control and superior standards. That belief could not be further from reality. Modern vehicles are assembled from components supplied by hundreds of independent manufacturers scattered across the globe. The car company does not make your alternator, your oxygen sensor, your brake pads, or your fuel pump. They contract those parts from suppliers, put their logo on the box, and charge you a premium for the privilege of buying what they call genuine. Take oxygen sensors as an example. Ford does not manufacture oxygen sensors. Neither does Honda, Toyota, or GM. They source them from companies like Denso, Bosch, and NTK. These suppliers design the sensors, build them to meet the car manufacturer's specifications, and ship them to the assembly plant. When that same supplier sells an oxygen sensor under their own brand name in the aftermarket, it is often the exact same part, built in the same factory, tested to the same standards. The only difference is the packaging and the price. A Denso oxygen sensor sold at a parts store for $60 is functionally identical to the same Denso sensor sold at a Toyota dealership for $180. Same part number, same factory, different profit margin. This is not limited to sensors. It applies to nearly every component on your vehicle. Continental makes fuel pumps for multiple car brands, then sells aftermarket versions under their own name. Aisin produces transmissions for Toyota, then offers rebuild kits and replacement parts directly to consumers. Bosch supplies ignition coils, starters, and alternators to European manufacturers, then markets those same components as aftermarket parts. The industry knows this. Mechanics know this. But dealerships and parts departments benefit from customers not knowing this, so the information stays buried. Even more surprising is how often aftermarket manufacturers improve on OEM designs. When a car is being developed, engineers make compromises. They balance performance, cost, weight, noise, and durability to hit price targets and meet regulatory requirements. Once a vehicle is in production, aftermarket companies reverse engineer those parts, identify weaknesses, and release updated versions that address known failure points. A perfect example is brake pads. OEM brake pads are designed to be quiet, produce minimal dust, and last just long enough to avoid warranty claims. They are rarely optimized for maximum stopping power or heat resistance. Aftermarket brands like Akebono, Raybestos, and Centric study those OEM pads, adjust the friction material formulation, improve the backing plate design, and release versions that stop harder, last longer, and handle heat better, all while costing less than the dealer alternative. I have installed thousands of brake pads over my career, and I can tell you from direct experience that premium aftermarket pads consistently outperform OEM versions in real-world conditions. Akebono Pro ACT pads, which cost about $50 a set, deliver smoother stops and longer lifespan than many $120 dealership pads. Raybestos Element 3 pads, priced around $45, offer better bite and heat management than OEM equivalents that cost double. The difference is not subtle. It is measurable, repeatable, and backed by decades of field testing across millions of vehicles. The same logic applies to suspension components. Monroe and KYB are two of the largest shock and strut manufacturers in the world. They supply original equipment to car manufacturers, then sell upgraded aftermarket versions designed to last longer and perform better than the parts they originally installed. A KYB strut sold at a parts store for $80 often outlasts a $200 dealership strut because KYB engineers specifically designed it to handle extended mileage and harsher conditions. They are not cutting corners. They are improving on a baseline that was never meant to be exceptional. Then there is the issue of counterfeit and low-quality knockoffs. This is where the cheap parts scare stories come from, and they are not entirely unfounded. Marketplace platforms and unregulated online sellers flood the market with counterfeit components that look legitimate but fail catastrophically. Fake Bosch sensors, counterfeit NGK spark plugs, and knockoff Moog ball joints exist, and they cause real problems. But lumping quality aftermarket brands into the same category as counterfeit junk is dishonest. A Denso sensor from a reputable retailer is not the same as a no-name sensor from an overseas seller with 0 reviews. The key is knowing where to buy and which brands to trust. Reputable parts retailers like Rock Auto, AutoZone, Advance Auto, and O'Reilly source directly from manufacturers and guarantee authenticity. Buying from these suppliers eliminates counterfeit risk. Sticking to established aftermarket brands like Denso, Bosch, NTK, Accabono, Raybestos, Monroe, KYB, Moog, and Gates ensures you are getting parts that meet or exceed original equipment manufacturer standards. These companies have reputations to protect, they offer warranties, they stand behind their products, and they cost a fraction of what dealerships charge for functionally identical components. What makes this even more frustrating is how dealerships exploit customer fear. They train service advisors to dismiss aftermarket parts as risky, unreliable, or warranty voiding. None of that is true. Federal law protects consumers' rights to use aftermarket parts without losing vehicle warranty coverage, as long as those parts meet original equipment manufacturer specifications. A quality aftermarket oxygen sensor will not void your powertrain warranty. A Denso fuel pump will not invalidate your emissions coverage. But dealerships rarely mention that because it undermines their business model. And here is the part that should make you angry. Dealerships do not just mark up parts. They mark them up outrageously. A typical dealership parts department adds a 40 to 100% markup over their cost. That means a part they buy for $50 gets sold to you for $100 or more. Aftermarket retailers operate on much thinner margins, often marking up parts only 10 to 30%. The result is that you pay double or triple for a part that is no better, sometimes worse, than what you could have bought elsewhere. This is not about being cheap, it is about being informed. Paying $300 for a dealership alternator when a $120 Bosch unit from AutoZone will last just as long is not smart spending. It is not protecting your investment. It is falling for a markup scam disguised as quality assurance. Once you understand how parts are sourced, manufactured, and distributed, the illusion shatters. You stop seeing price as a quality indicator and start recognizing it for what it really is: profit extraction. And that is when everything changes. You stop overpaying, you stop assuming. You start choosing parts based on specifications, brand reputation, and real-world performance instead of logo placement and fear tactics. That shift saves thousands over the life of a vehicle, and it starts by knowing which specific parts deliver maximum value without compromise. That is what you need to learn next. The moment you understand which parts to buy and which brands to trust, car ownership becomes dramatically cheaper without sacrificing a single ounce of reliability. This is not about cutting corners. It is about refusing to pay inflated prices for components that deliver identical performance at a fraction of the cost. Let me walk you through the exact parts where aftermarket brands consistently outperform or match OEM quality while costing significantly less. Start with oxygen sensors. This is one of the most overpriced components at any dealership. An OEM oxygen sensor can cost anywhere from $150 to $300, depending on the vehicle. Meanwhile, Denso, NTK, and Bosch all manufacture oxygen sensors that are functionally identical to OEM units and cost between $40 and $80. These are not knockoffs. Denso supplies oxygen sensors to Toyota, Honda, and Nissan as original equipment. NTK, which is part of NGK, supplies sensors to Ford, GM, and Chrysler. When you buy a Denso or NTK sensor from Rock Auto or AutoZone, you are buying the same part that would have been installed at the factory, just without the car manufacturer's logo stamped on the box. I have installed hundreds of these sensors, and failure rates are no different than OEM. In fact, I have seen Denso sensors outlast dealership replacements by tens of thousands of miles. The price difference is pure markup, nothing else. Next, brake pads and rotors. This is where the savings get massive. Dealership brake pads can cost $100 to $200 per axle. Rotors can run $80 to $150 each. Akabono Pro Act pads cost about $50 per axle, and they deliver smooth, quiet stops with minimal dust. Raybestos Element 3 pads cost around $45, and they offer excellent bite and durability. Centric rotors, used by professional mechanics across the country, cost $30 to $50 each, and they resist warping better than many OEM options. I have done back-to-back comparisons. Akabono pads on a Honda Accord lasted 65,000 miles. OEM pads on an identical vehicle lasted 55,000 miles. The Akabono pads cost half as much. The performance was superior. There is no logical reason to pay dealership prices for brake components. Then there are spark plugs. OEM spark plugs are not special. NGK and Denso manufacture spark plugs for nearly every car brand on the planet. When you walk into a dealership and buy spark plugs, you are buying NGK or Denso plugs with a markup. A set of NGK iridium plugs from a parts store costs $30 to $50. The same plugs at a dealership cost $80 to $120. Same part, same lifespan, same performance. I have never seen a dealership spark plug last longer than an NGK or Denso equivalent purchased elsewhere. The only difference is the price and the box. Air filters and cabin filters are another area where dealerships exploit ignorance. An OEM engine air filter costs $25 to $40. A quality aftermarket filter from Fram K&N or MAN costs $10 to $20 and filters just as effectively. Cabin filters are even worse. Dealerships charge $30 to $50 for a cabin filter that takes 2 minutes to replace. Aftermarket versions cost $8 to $15 and fit identically. There is no performance advantage to OEM filters. None. They are paper and pleats. Paying triple for a car logo is absurd. Suspension components follow the same pattern. Monroe and KYB supply shocks and struts to car manufacturers as original equipment, then sell upgraded versions in the aftermarket. A KYB strut costs $60 to $100. A dealership strut costs $150 to $250. The KYB unit is often built with better materials and designed to handle more abuse because it is marketed to drivers who keep their vehicles past warranty. I have installed KYB struts on vehicles with 200,000 miles, and they are still working perfectly years later. Dealership struts on the same vehicles failed sooner and cost twice as much. Batteries are one of the biggest scams in automotive retail. Dealerships sell batteries for $150 to $250 that are sourced from Johnson Controls, Exide, and East Penn. the same companies that supply Walmart, Costco, and AutoZone. A battery from Costco costs $80 to $120 and is built in the same factory as the dealership version. I have tested this repeatedly. Cold cranking amps, reserve capacity, and lifespan are all identical. The only difference is the label and the price. Paying double for a dealership battery is lighting money on fire. Alternators and starters are another area where aftermarket brands dominate value. A Bosch alternator costs $90 to $150. A dealership alternator costs $250 to $400. Both are built to the same specifications, and both carry warranties. They fail at similar rates. I have replaced countless alternators, and Bosch units consistently match or exceed OEM longevity. The same applies to starters. Denso and Bosch starters cost half of what dealerships charge, and they last just as long. Even fuel pumps, which drivers are often terrified to buy aftermarket, are perfectly safe when sourced from quality brands. Denso, Bosch, and Carter all manufacture fuel pumps for car companies, then sell aftermarket versions for significantly less. A Denso fuel pump costs $150 to $250. A dealership fuel pump costs $400 to $600. Same part, same factory, same lifespan. I have installed aftermarket fuel pumps that ran for over 100,000 miles without issue. The scare tactics around fuel pumps are overblown. Not every part should be bought cheap. There are specific components where cutting costs leads to real problems. Control arms, ball joints, and tie rod ends are areas where quality matters significantly. Cheap, no-name ball joints fail early and create safety hazards. Premium aftermarket brands like Moog, TRW, and Lemforder deliver OEM-level quality at lower prices. Moog ball joints are legendary for durability. I have installed Moog parts on vehicles that outlasted the original suspension components by years. The key is sticking to reputable brands and not buying the absolute cheapest option available. Timing belts and water pumps are another area where brand reputation matters. Gates is the gold standard for timing belts. They supply original equipment manufacturer timing belts to most manufacturers and then sell aftermarket versions that are identical in every meaningful way. A Gates timing belt kit costs $80 to $150. A dealership timing belt kit costs $200 to $350. Same belt, same tensioners, same water pump. There is no difference in failure rates. Ice and water pumps are similarly reliable, and they cost half of what dealerships charge. I have never had an ice and water pump fail prematurely. The strategy is simple. Buy quality aftermarket brands from reputable retailers. Avoid no-name components from unverified sellers. Stick to manufacturers with established reputations and warranties. Denso, Bosch, NTK, NGK, Akebono, Raybestos, Monroe, KYB, Moog, Gates, Aisin, Centric, Continental. These brands are trusted by professional mechanics worldwide. They supply parts to car manufacturers, then offer the same or better quality in the aftermarket for less money. That is not a loophole. That is how the industry works once you strip away the branding nonsense. And here is the part dealerships will never admit. Many of their so-called OEM parts are rebranded aftermarket components with inflated prices. I have opened dealership parts boxes and found components manufactured by the exact same suppliers that sell directly to consumers. The only difference was the sticker and the invoice. Dealerships are not protecting you. They are protecting their profit margins. This is why informed drivers save thousands over the life of a vehicle. They stop paying for logos. They stop falling for scare tactics. They buy based on specifications, brand reputation, and real-world performance. A $50 Denso oxygen sensor works as well as a $200 dealership sensor. A $50 set of Akebono brake pads stops just as effectively as $150 OEM pads. A $100 KYB strut lasts just as long as a $250 dealership strut. The performance is identical. The savings are massive. Once you start thinking this way, every repair becomes an opportunity to save without compromise. You stop assuming expensive means better. You start verifying quality through research and brand recognition. You learn which parts are worth the premium and which are pure markup. That knowledge is power, and it transforms car ownership from an endless money drain into something manageable and predictable. If this video changed how you think about car parts, hit like so more drivers see it. Subscribe if you want weekly breakdowns that save you money without sacrificing reliability. And if you have ever bought a cheap part that outlasted an expensive one, drop it in the comments. Those stories matter because the most expensive car repair is not the one that costs the most. It is the one you never needed to overpay for in the first place. Now you know which parts to buy, which brands to trust, and how to stop letting markups drain your wallet.